Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you who have joined us today from the far corners of the globe. We have become a truly international organization thanks to Zoom. So I'm glad to see that all of you have joined us today because it is a very special day. We are celebrating the International Day of the Family. Let me introduce, I'm Vinnie Santoro, by the way. I'm co-chair of the Family NGO Committee, along with Marcia Barlow, who is here. And let me also introduce Lynn Walsh, who's our recording secretary, and Roshana Chin, who is a member at large of our executive board. And I will be passing on the baton to Roshana in a couple of minutes. But as I said before, we are celebrating the International Day of Families today, which was established about 30 years ago. And being that it is such a special day, I just want to give a short congratulatory message to all the parents who are watching, because without parents, you don't have families. So congratulations to all the parents out there. The International Day of Families is just one of many international days that are celebrated by the UN. As we keep saying all the time, the family is really the bedrock of society, and we do pay a great deal of attention to various aspects of the family with the presentations that we give during the course of the year. And this will be our last meeting of the 24-25 season, but we will be back in October with another exciting program, we hope, for all of you to attend. We know that the family has been enshrined as the bedrock of our communities by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but more recently, the General Assembly adopted at its last session in September a document which was entitled the Pact for the Future. It's a 64-page report covering many topics, but the report made several references to, quote, social cohesion. But in my view, before you can have social cohesion, you really can't have it without family cohesion. Fortunately, this report did make a key point regarding the family. And I would like to quote from that report. And it says, the promotion of intergenerational.
You're muted. I think you're muted. You need to unmute because we can't hear you.
Okay, I must have hit something as I picked up this report to read from the Pact of the Future. The reference is the following: the promotion of intergenerational solidarity as well as intergenerational dialogue and social cohesion is an indispensable part of the foundation for the prosperity of future generations. And in this respect, the role of families and family-friendly and family-oriented policies as contributors to sustainable development must be recognized. It was very good to see that. And today, to review family developments and family policies over the past 30 years, and since this is the International Day of Families, we've put together a program with three very distinguished and eminent speakers. We have today Theresa Okafor from the African Cultural Heritage Foundation, who will speak to us from Nairobi. And we have Ahmed Aref from the Doha International Family Institute, and Spencer James from Brigham Young University School of Family Life. To make a proper introduction of our speakers, I will hand over to my colleague, Roshana Chin, who has worked very hard to put together today's meeting. But before I do so, I just want to remind everybody that we do have Q&A at the end of the presentations. So if you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A box. So without further ado, Roshana, over to you. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vinny. My name is Roshana Chin. I serve the NGO Alliance Defending Freedom International as legal counsel, UN. I'm also a member of the executive board. We're excited to have organized this event for you on International Year of the Family +30, celebrating progress, highlighting concerns to commemorate the International Day of Families. Please, again, put your questions in the chat box. Our other executive board members will compile the questions at the end, and then we'll have that timed with the speakers to do that. Also, please mute yourself before we begin as to ensure there's no background noise. This event is being recorded, and we hope to upload this on the committee website in a couple of days. Recognizing the unique and fundamental role of the family in sustainable development, the UN General Assembly proclaimed 1994 as the International Year of the Family. And to further emphasize the importance of families, the UNGA also established the International Day of Families to be observed annually on May 15th. In this regard, during the 79th session just last fall, the IYF+30 resolution was adopted. I think today's program provides an opportunity for these panelists to discuss the progress made over the past 30 years and the greatest areas of concern that need focused attention. We can explore what's been done to promote greater awareness of the family as the natural and fundamental group unit of society that is entitled to protection by society and the state. Now, governments, policymakers, and the public can effectively ensure this progress is directly experienced in homes around the world. So with that, our first speaker today is Dr. Spencer L. James. I'm pleased to introduce him. Dr. Spencer L. James is a professor in the School of Family Life at Brigham Young University and is the founder and director of BYU's Global Families Research Initiative. Dr. James, you have the floor.
For some reason, it wouldn't let me share my screen properly without being muted. Okay. Can everybody see that screen okay?
Yes.
Great. So good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever in the world you are, and thank you. It really is an honor for me to join this distinguished panel and to commemorate the International Day of Families. As previously mentioned, my name is Spencer James. I'm a professor in the School of Family Life here at BYU in the United States, where my research examines how family structures and relationships shape well-being worldwide. Today, I'd like us to consider why the family matters, where we've been, where we want to go, and what it's going to take to get there. As mentioned, in 1994, the United Nations declared it the International Year of the Family. 30 years on, families remain foundational, yet they also face profound and unprecedented challenges. In the next few minutes, I'll reflect on several key areas that help us take stock of these changes and hopefully chart a way forward, drawing on both my own research, the research of other scholars, as well as the insights of relational sociologist Pier Paolo Donati. Over the past 30 years, we've seen profound shifts in family patterns. Here I name only a few. And if you'd like more, I recently wrote a paper on what's happening to families all around the world. And if you're interested, I'm happy to share that. Marriage is occurring later on, and in some places less often. Divorce and cohabitation have increased most dramatically in wealthier countries. For example, in countries like Sweden, France, and the Netherlands, cohabitation is now the determinant and dominant context for childbearing. In East Asia, such as in South Korea and Taiwan, marriage is delayed and fertility rates have fallen to historic lows. By contrast, in West African nations like Nigeria, Ghana, and Benin, marriage rates remain high and extended family structures remain resilient, a pattern we see repeated in many places in the Middle East and North Africa. As for fertility, Japan, Italy, and Spain, for instance, all report total fertility rates less than 1.4 children per woman, where with roughly 1/3 of citizens projected to be over the age 65 by 2050. These demographic pressures have spurred experiments in expanded parental leave, childcare subsidies, and carefully managed immigration. And these differences matter. In my research on global family patterns, my colleagues and I find that both structure and stability and functioning matter. The type of family structure strongly influences the likelihood of stability, and together, they shape child and adult well-being. We cannot pretend that all family structures are equally conducive to thriving. A child-headed household, for instance, does not offer the same developmental support as a stable two-parent one. Yet much of our global discourse assumes a single linear trajectory toward deinstitutionalized families. In fact, we are seeing both convergence and divergence in family patterns, and any global policy response must begin by recognizing this complexity, not flattening it. That said, there have been real policy successes. Conditional cash transfers in Latin America have improved children's health and educational outcomes. In Europe and parts of Asia, parental leave has enabled better work-family balance. But here's the problem. Most of these policies treat the family instrumentally. They support parenting or labor force participation, but are less successful at supporting long-term relationships such as marriage or intergenerational caregiving. They tend to be better at helping individuals, not families as a whole. And crucially, they tend to be reactive, stepping in only after families are already in crisis, rather than proactive, building the relational strengths that prevent breakdown in the first place. Think of how many countries fund divorce counseling, but not premarital education, or expand childcare options only after birth rates plummet. This theme runs throughout my comparative research as well, where published reports such as Marriage Still Matters, and the screenshot you can see there, in many contexts, policy remains reluctant to acknowledge the social and developmental importance of marriage and long-term relational commitments. Instead of merely supporting individuals within families, we need policies that ask, does this strengthen the family as a whole? Does this encourage the type of family behaviors we seek to foster? The Italian sociologist Pierpaolo Donati reminds us that differentiation is not the same as discrimination. Excuse me. Discrimination is the unfair treatment of equals. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. Differentiation, by contrast, is legitimate distinction, appropriate differentiation among relationships and relationship forms with different capacities and needs, recognizing that some family forms are more conducive to solidarity and long-term care is not unjust, it is responsible and evidence-informed policymaking. If discrimination is the unjust treatment of equals, differentiation means acknowledging the distinctiveness of some family forms and encouraging those that are best equipped to foster family unity and family cohesion, all while supporting all family forms. Treating all family forms identically, regardless of their effects on well-being, is not fairness, it's negligence. This is because families are not just private arrangements. They produce what sociologists call relational goods: trust, care, shared identity, civic responsibility. In crisis situations, such as displacement, economic hardship, pandemics, these goods become critical. Families often step in long before institutions can respond. This is one reason scholars emphasize both structure and function. Strong family structures are more likely to foster stable, supportive functioning. While warmth and shared responsibility are essential, they are often undergirded by stable, durable family forms, particularly two-parent households. We must not set structure and functioning against each other. For these reasons, scholars insist that the family is not a burden on society. It is a generator of social capital. It mediates between the individual and society, between rights and responsibilities. To treat it as a passive recipient of policy is to misunderstand its function. One of the most enduring wellsprings of this social capital is faith, which, woven into daily routines and shared rituals, binds families together across cultures. Globally, faith and family go hand in hand. In many societies, religious belief is not confined solely to public worship, it lives in the home. Family prayer, religious holidays, rituals, these are glue that binds families and communities together. In our recent report, A Not So Good Faith Estimate, based on 11 different countries, we found that home-centered religious practices are strong predictors of relational health. These patterns show up from North and South America to Europe to Oceania and beyond, and we're only just beginning. Here at BYU, we've just launched a global study covering 60,000 individuals across 30 different countries to explore these dynamics in even greater depth. Yet many family policies in secular contexts shy away from engaging faith. We need to change and challenge that. Faith communities should neither be sidelined nor privileged. Rather, they should be given equal treatment under the law because they are often among the first lines of support, especially in areas where state or market institutions are absent or ineffective. And faith-based practices often produce the very relational goods that policy is or should be trying to foster. With all this said, let me suggest something bold. If corporations can be granted legal personhood, then families, which are far more essential than to human flourishing, deserve at least as much. Corporations come and go. Their death is part of market logic. But the demise of a family has no substitute. Its consequences ripple across generations. We should consider families as citizens in the sociological and political sense, bearers of rights and responsibilities, contributors to the common good. This means empowering, not merely tolerating, relational forms that cultivate reciprocity and social cohesion across generations. Treating all family forms the same is not justice, it's denial. Good policy, therefore, is about distinction, recognizing that not all relational forms or family structures serve the same functions or hold the same capacities for long-term success. Fortunately for us, many at the United Nations are thinking long-term. The 2023 High-Level Political Forum Declaration, previously mentioned, commits nations to leave no one behind on the road to 2030. A background study released just yesterday underscores that placing families at the center of Sustainable Development Goal implementation is now indispensable. Likewise, the Pact for the Future, adopted just last year by the UN General Assembly and mentioned previously, called for strengthened multilateralism and the implementation of family-friendly and family-oriented policies. Finally, the upcoming Second World Summit for Social Development, among others, aims to address the gaps and recommit to the Copenhagen Declaration on Social Development and the Program of Action and its implementation. If we are serious about both multilateralism and long-term thinking, then the family, humanity's most enduring institution, must be at the center of that vision. So where do we go from here? First, we must support caregiving across generations, from youth in sub-Saharan Africa to aging populations in East Asia and Europe. Second, we must shift how we measure family well-being, not just who lives with whom, but how they relate and how structure facilitates that functioning. Third, we must embrace subsidiarity, empowering families to solve their own problems rather than replacing them with distant systems. Scholars call this complex subsidiarity. In other words, a partnership between families, civil society, the state, and the market. It means building a relational society where families are not only protected, but respected. To close, families are not burdens on society. They are the builders of it. They deserve more than rhetorical support. They deserve legal recognition, social respect, and policies that strengthen their bonds rather than merely supporting the individuals in them. As we reflect on 30 years since the International Year of the Family, let's commit to move forward not just with new programs, but with a renewed vision. Families as citizens, families as subjects, families as partners in building a more just and flourishing world. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. James. I really appreciated the summary of the last 30 years, especially your insights on those global family trends. I think that sets the stage well for our subsequent panelists, your insights on the importance of structure and stability of the family. And I think we're all excited to hear and see the results of that research once it's published. More family policy research can inform a lot of what's happening here at the United Nations and can inform policies that are coming out from that. So thank you so much. With that, I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, who is Dr. Ahmed Aref, who is with the Doha International Family Institute and a member of the Qatar Foundation. Dr. Ahmed Aref, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rashana, for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here today with you, the distinguished speakers and attendees commemorating the International Day of the Families. So with my friend and brother James gave an overview about where we are now, I'll gonna some kind of providing a zoom in view on the work of DFI, the Doha International Family Institute, trying to create impact in terms of social policy making and helping to enrich family cohesion and well-being in the region. So from the global perspective to some kind of regional focus, I'll start my presentation. So can you see my screen, right?
Yes.
All right, so the Doha International Family Institute, in brief, is a policy and advocacy institute working to advance knowledge on Arab families and promote evidence-based policies. We have three core machineries in our operating model. We generate evidence by producing the research and evidence that is policy-oriented. And we try to transform these findings into policy outputs in terms of policy proposals, trying to have legislative development proposals with the policymakers or even intervention programs with some of the NGOs. So the research findings are transformed into tangible policy and practice outcomes. And we cannot do this kind of impact without the third element of DFI, which is the advocacy arm. So we engage the relevant stakeholders at the policy upstream level, and we do as well nudge the society and working closely with the society to create the general consensus and public opinion among the general audience at large. So I will give brief examples on how these three core elements are working together in creating a real impact, helping families in Qatar and in the region and internationally. So I will start by examples of impact at the national level. We have in Qatar the family law, which was launched in 2006. So we came like in 2016, we said that there's 10 years since the issuance of the family law in Qatar, and it's an enough period to assess the experience of the family law in Qatar. So we conducted research on the challenges are facing families that are dealing with legal disputes in the family courts. And in order to secure the buy-in of the relevant stakeholders and to capitalize on our advocacy arm of DFI, we have engaged with us as partners, the Supreme Judicial Council, Lawyers Association, Ministry of Justice, Qatar Foundation for Social Work, and so on and so forth. So you have the governmental representatives, you have the NGO representatives that are dealing together with every element related to family disputes at courts. So they are part of this study, and we have conducted after the finding of the study itself has been conducted and finalized. We conducted a policy forum. We didn't mean to just disseminate the finding, but to have a joint say, all of us together, to have one proposal for the policymakers that this is the most pressing issue from all the recommendations. So the most pressing issue was that there was a concern among the disputed families in the courts related to the privacy, because they were having this kind of family court sessions within the same sitting and within the same building of the commercial court and the criminal court, where, for instance, a woman can talk to the judge on something particular on the marital relationship, defending her case, but at the same room you have a journalist or criminal. So there was an issue related to privacy, and the top priority was to have a family court building dedicated to the family disputes. And because all of us, it's not DFI only as NGO, but all of us with the Supreme Judicial Council, with the Lawyers Association, with the Ministry of Justice, we have a shared kind of white paper extracted from the research finding and from the policy dialogue. And after 3 months of this policy forum, we have a dedicated family court building in Qatar. So this is kind of how we try to have this kind of research to get into a real tangible outcome that will benefit families. There are many examples. I will give just a brief overview on some of other examples. As James just highlighted, that one of the common concerns among families and among national policies, particularly in the high-income countries, is the declining fertility rates. And Qatar, of course, is facing this. And the projection is to reach the replacement rate in few years' time, and then the population development will be in a critical situation. So we have conducted a research project, a policy-oriented project with the National Planning Council. It's called Social Aspects of Fertility and Policy Implications in Qatar, where we conducted interviews among 58 nationals, but we conducted as well a national survey, which was among a representative sample of 4,271 Qatari nationals. So in order to understand the root causes of divorce, the root causes, of the declining fertility rates, and what are the elements and the reasons behind the decision of parents, for instance, to have limited number of kids or to fly from marriage, or there are like different causes that we want to have evidence to understand the reasons, and of course to have kind of benchmarking analysis as well to put some recommendations forward. So all the recommendations and the results of this policy-oriented research have been integrated in the national planning policy, in the upcoming 5 years national planning policy endorsed by the Prime Minister in Qatar. I'll not go into details, but there are like major recommendations related to increased work-family balance provisions, some financial allowances that might help. There are issues related to health, dealing with infertility cases that needs a different track to be addressed, and so on and so forth. Another example of evidence-driven impact at the national level, we were inspired by the Icelandic prevention model, the IPM, dealing with substance abuse among adolescents. And we took the same modality. They have intervention program to eliminate the risk factors and to enhance the protective factors among the adolescents, dealing with their familial context and community at large context. We have developed this and customized the same model to the context in Qatar in order to deal with some of the behavioral deviations at large. We had pilot examination among 7 schools in Qatar, and we conducted the pre and post questionnaire to assess the effectiveness of this intervention program. And we have excellent results. When we had these results, we also proposed to the Ministry of Education and Higher Education to have this program. It's called Tanshi'a program, and Tanshi'a is an Arabic word translated to upbringing or socialization. And it was launched by the former Prime Minister in Qatar in 2023 to be a national program that should be implemented at the national level among all schools. I will share briefly some of the results to see how the effectiveness of this program and the intervention program was reflected in the day-to-day behavior. You see, for instance, spending more time with the family, if you compare the pre-questionnaire to the post-questionnaire, you find that there is an increase of almost 16% of the percentage of those who spend more than 30 hours a week with their families. When you ask the adolescents on how many times per week do you eat with your family, this one increased also of 18%. So this is the enhancement of protective factors. You don't work explicitly on the behavioral deviations issues, rather than working on a general kind of well-being enhancement that could create this kind of self-resilience as well. Can I easily receive emotional support from my mother, for instance? This also, there was an increase of the number and of the adolescents who expressed that in the post questionnaire they received more emotional support from mother and also from father. Setting rules and parental monitoring also, enhanced with this particular program. And as well as, adolescents' participation in playing and reading, and how the mother and father can enjoy some of the activities with their adolescents. Also, what is, I think, remarkable in this intervention program, that the family violence increased. And if not increased, the exposure of family violence to the kids was really decreased. The family violence at large decreased. So let's look at this question. My family members argue with each other in a scary way. Most respondents said that their families did not argue in a scary way in front of them. This percentage increased from 76% in the pre-questionnaire result to 86%. So that means the exposure to the family violence is less. And also, the respondents said that their parents did not hit each other during the argument, and this percentage increased from 82% to 91%. That means also this intervention program is not only beneficial to the adolescents themselves, but for the parents, dealing with some aspects related to family violence, and so on and so forth. So also we have this knowledge, we have the commitment, because we are mandated by Arab families. So we have the commitment to share this knowledge and to transform this best practices into the regional also level. So we have been asked by the GCC Council to present on the Tanshia program and the finding, and how the GCC countries, the Gulf states, could benefit from this. In addition to the Gulf states, we have been invited by the parliament in Iraq and the prime minister in Iraq also to learn more about the Tanshia program and to benefit from it, customizing the model into the Iraq case. There are other examples, for instance, dealing with issues related to digital addiction. We have conducted research on technology overuse among adolescents in Qatar, and we have a policy brief extracted from this research. And this research is not exclusively DFI, is DFI with other entities also in Qatar. And the result of all of this momentum resulted in last April 2025, the announcement by the Prime Minister of the establishment of National Committee on Digital Safety, hosted by the Ministry of Social Development and the Family, with the Ministry of Communication, Telecommunication, and many other parts, that will study all the elements related to digital safety and propose policies and implement some programs. We also, as I said at the beginning, we do not only exclusively work with the policymakers and forget the general audience. So we engage with also the public audience through kind of trying to simplify the finding in an appealing way that could engage the larger audience. I'll give another two examples very quick. One example is at the regional level. We have conducted research on the marriage in the Arab world, assessing everything related to marriage. And from this book also, we have another research project on assessing the marital relationship on the first 5 years of marriage in the Arab world, because within this 5 years of marriage, the first 5 years, the majority of divorce cases are happening. So there is some kind of there's something happening within the marital relationship at the beginning of the marriage that we need to understand why there is early divorce. And the result of this evidence is in addition to the report itself, that we are working currently on a guiding principles on premarital education program. And here I also align with James' presentation that said that we should invest in prevention rather than, addressing only the issues after it's happening. We have another project on family well-being index. We have also a grant to also generate knowledge in Arab countries among research community. But I will stop by this one. It's a kind of international also impact, because DFE has a consultative status with the UN Economic and Social Council, and we also leverage on our existence at the international level. There was a General Assembly resolution that stated that the Doha International Family Institute will host the celebration of the 30 years of the International Year of the Family, which took place October 2024. We did a huge conference with the presidential level attendees. The conference itself was also evidence-driven. We conducted expert group meetings in many continents across the globe. We have generated evidence with Duke Center on Family and Child Policy on the 4 mega trends identified by UNGA. So the Doha call to action was also, it included some of these recommendations extracted from this whole momentum of technical preparation. And we are conducting also post-conference regional policy forums. We will go back, for instance, to Mexico, to Australia, to Kuala Lumpur to conduct, again, instead of the expert group meetings that was in preparation for the conference, we will conduct policy forums post-conference to explore some of the recommendations and ways for implementation. We always have, of course, UN side events within HLPF, CSW, CSD, and so on and so forth. And we will have also a strong position within the upcoming World Summit for Social Development, which, of course, you are all invited to join in Qatar in November this year. Thank you so much. And sorry if I have, exceeded my time limit.
Not at all, Dr. Aref. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I think I especially appreciated hearing the evidence of family policies and programs in Qatar and the Gulf region. I think, all of us here attending this call, we're interested in family. It's a universal human reality experienced across cultures, yet the challenges families face around the world vary, and the particular ways in which different UN member states are addressing this, I think, can be very illuminative in informing best practices and other family policies elsewhere. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. With that, I'm pleased to introduce our final speaker, Dr. Theresa Okafor. She's the director. She's the director of Foundation for African Cultural Heritage. Dr. Okafor, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Oh, great. Okay. So I'd like to thank Dr. Spencer for that brilliant overview on the family, and also thank Dr. Aref for giving us that brilliant initiative carried out in Doha on behalf of the Gulf states. So I will be discussing the African family and how it's navigating through the times. Of course, I'm limited by time as to what I could say, but hopefully if we get to question and answer series, I'll be able to discuss a few more. So I'd like to start by stating the obvious, which is that the African family or the African continent comprises 54 countries. And in terms of family in the African continent, it's important to bear in mind that each of the countries, not states, countries, have their own distinctive priorities when it comes to policies. They have their own constitutions, their own cultural traditions, their own colonial legacies, and also their own legal systems. So there may be regional sharing, regional similarities, but these differences exist. And there's a lot of mischaracterization of the African continent because people feel Africa is actually smaller than it really is, or people tend to castigate or undermine Africa as a dark continent. But having said that, there's also a recognition that the continent is growing and more people are beginning to see the correlation between economic growth in the African continent and its population, especially its youthful population. In describing the African family, I'd like to say that, first of all, the African family is God-centered. At least 80% of the people in Africa believe in God. And even if the law exists, there would always be that reference as to what does the Bible say, what does the Quran say. You know, there's always that reference to a supreme authority as regards things that we do, things that we can accept in the family. And then there's also that understanding that marriage is is the building blocks of the family. And marriage is a union between a man and a woman, at least for most parts of Africa, with the exception of a few countries, 1 or 2 countries. And in Africa, we believe in the nuclear family, which is your immediate household, where you have a mother, father, and you have children. And then you also have the extended family, which comprises the aunties, uncle, and the grandparents. The grandparents are an important part of the African family. And so that's why care homes are rare in the African continent. There's also complementarity in the African family, complementarity between the man and the woman, not what people tend to think is dominion. Of course, you can have dysfunctional family when you have the male chauvinist and then the woman is made to feel she's inferior. But in the typical African family, there is complementarity and there is no confrontation, because in the typical African family, the wife is concerned about her duties towards her husband, and the husband in turn is concerned about his duties towards his wife. And so when each one is seeking, my rights, when there's that misplaced pursuit of rights, rights are important if it's moderated with responsibilities. But when there's that misplaced pursuit of absolute rights, it can actually fragment the family. It can fragment the family because relationship gets confrontational and communication can very easily break down. So union is very important in the African family. And there's also that communal sense in the African family where everyone looks out for the others, So even if you're walking down the street, the neighbors care about the way you're dressed. The neighbors care about you. And the African family is understood to be the custodian of morals and ethics. And that's why things like sex education cannot be relegated to the schools, because the family is the primary caregiver, the primary caregiver, especially when it comes to education. And child rearing and management of the household is a very important aspect of the African family. Of course, you do have women who pursue jobs outside the home, and that is perfect. I mean, they're free to do so. But the majority of the women in African family also understand that the duty of child rearing and management of the household surpasses every other kind of employment anyone can possibly imagine. Because when that is neglected, then you are leaving those important aspects to what is known as house helps or houseboys, house girls, drivers, relatives, and that's when abuses can occur, because most of the sexual abuses that occur in many families are not done by strangers, but actually occur within the home. And that's when parents are absent in the home. Conflict can also be resolved very easily. And sometimes conflict is something that, might involve other members other than the immediate family, because older people like aunties, uncles, grandparents, or older members of society who are married are considered to be mentors to the younger ones, as a way of putting off disgruntlement or divorce. But that is not to say that divorce does not occur. It does occur even in the African society. But there are a couple of disruptive influence which is shaking the fabrics of the African society, making African society push back, especially at the UN. And this is when love, which should exist amongst couple, is being replaced by a kind of social contract or what is considered a gender contract, which has no reference to biology. And then also you find that there's a kind of death of male and female. People are trying to sort of blur the differences that exist between male and female, and subsequently the differences that exist between motherhood and fatherhood. And when that happens, it opens the door to all kinds of possibilities: bisexual, transsexual, homosexual, heterosexual bestiality, including what a British journalist, Max Stinson, described as metrosexuality, feminization of masculinity, cultivation of a narcissist appearance that makes men want to be desirable as women. And then what is having an even more disruptive influence on the family is surrogacy, which is a kind of exploitation of the woman and exploitation of the child, which is a kind of trafficking in children, and also which is changing the understanding of the meaning of marriage, which is companionship and procreation. And then we have an economic value being placed on the child. So those are the risks when there is this pursuit of economic growth, prosperity, and then we forget that it should be at the service of the child, the mother, the father, the sick, the aging. But then when you have that unfettered economic growth, you can have the child will begin to be seen as an economic unit, and the woman or the mother is also seen as an economic unit. And this is some of the arguments behind surrogacy, And then also when it comes to the sick and aging, there's also that danger of seeing them as liabilities. And that's what is behind the argument we have these days regarding euthanasia or assisted suicide. So again, what is disrupting the family is the unfettered dependence on digital media, which projects violence and nudity. Nudity could be another word for pornography, which is actually rewiring the brain and causing a lot of violence in society. And then, of course, all of this leads to the fragmentation of the family. Now, SDG is a good thing in the sense that it focuses on the family, but we're aware that progress has been uneven, and there's also the risk that it might actually end up in a disaster or failure, just like the Millennium Development Goals did. So in considering the SDGs, if it's to fulfill its aim for the family, then it has to be in alignment with ethical values, and it must take the local context of the African countries into consideration. And it needs to focus, like I said, on economic growth without ignoring the dignity of the human person and the common good. So pushbacks are there, pushbacks against domestication of treaties that are anti-life and anti-family. And then there's a need for Africans to protect what we value the most, which is our family, in the context of rights and freedom without responsibility. And the need to protect marriage in the 21st century, given that many marriages are hitting the rock. And also considering that UN law, custom, and religious freedom are things that need to be considered as they affect the family. And then again, being honest, when we come to things like maternal mortality and education, because comprehensive sexuality education and the fact that mothers want to have a baby and then they're being told, use contraception to prevent maternal mortality, or unsafe abortion is a way that could stop maternal mortality. All of these things are paradoxical and are causing Africans to question the real intent behind all of these motives. And then we're looking at countries in the West, countries in Europe, Canada, US, and we see something happening. We see that initially there was this cry or alarm about population explosion. And then from population explosion, there was a radical fall in fertility, which actually led to a population implosion, and most of the population in the Northern Hemisphere are actually below replacement level, and with the high life expectancy, which is a good thing, and the aging population, which is a law of nature, you have effects because of that fall in fertility. There are impacts on taxation, on pension, on welfare, and the economy is impacted. And of course, it's leading to migration as well. So, but then the fact is, in Africa, there's enough wealth to actually cater for its burgeoning population. But then the question is, Africa is so rich, and yet why is it so poor? What is happening to the reserves in the African population? And why is population control seen as a means to alleviate poverty? That is the paradox, Africans are trying to, understand, come to terms with. Why are the poor seen as an enemy of the environment? Economics would argue that you do not eliminate poverty by eliminating people. People are not just inert consumers, but they are ingenious problem solvers and producers. So these are some of the issues that the African family is faced with and trying to contend with. And again, when it comes to, these negotiations we have at the UN on resolutions, we're careful, because sometimes instead of talking about things that can benefit the family, for instance, clean water, food, you have things that actually compromise, the standard of living and the quality of life of the family. And then many of these things will then determine funding priorities, making Africans remain, health dependent, So these are some of the problems that we're contending with. And again, women's rights versus the women's rights is pitched against the child's rights in Africa. So we're wondering, that why this is the case, because both rights are important. And rather than talking about rights, we should be looking at duties. So anyway, there's so much to say. I recognize that there's very little time to do so, but then I just want to leave you with thoughts about two books. One of them is The Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, written in 1931. And he said in that book, are we trading autonomy for ease and not even noticing it? He talks about happiness as being illusory because happiness is being induced by a drug. He talks, and this book was written almost like a century ago, He talks about immersive entertainment, which distracts from existential and societal issues. Then he talks about education becoming an echo chamber or a groupthink, not leaving room for deep thought and reflection. And reproduction is mechanized because children are no longer born naturally. Schools, he said, exist only as tools of state indoctrination. Ending is better than mending, talking about the disponibility rather than sustainability. And then problems arise when hedonistic satisfaction is prioritized over the family. The second book I'd like to reference here is The Children of Men, written by P.D. James in 1992, when he talks about a dystopian future, which he sets in 2021. And he was talking about the UK. He says, there'll be no biological or spiritual future. Schools have vanished along with childhood. There is no longer a system to pass down knowledge or culture. Humanity has become infertile, killed off by assisted suicide and euthanasia. And there have been no children born over 2 decades. And it says that UK has become a bleak authoritarian state with no children. Schools are abandoned, playgrounds are overgrown, and society is aging rapidly. Perhaps these books are like warnings against what could happen if we give in to this twisted thinking that opens the door to legislation that are permissive rather than in support of the family. The African family must not be seen as a subject of external influence, but as a co-creator of meaningful solutions rooted in dignity, sovereignty, and authentic progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Okafor. I think some insights I took away from your presentation was, appreciating your elevation of our awareness of the interrelationship between rights and duties, and calling us to analyze the effectiveness of family policy beyond purely economic or utilitarian considerations by taking into account moral and ethical values. And also, I appreciated you conveying some unique characteristics that are of family life that are common across Africa, particularly the importance of the extended family. So thank you so much for that. I've been receiving some questions in the chat box throughout the presentations from the audience. But first, I'd like to take moderator's privilege, so maybe we can kick off our Q&A session. The event is scheduled to end at 4, but we can go up to 4:15. So again, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. Marcia, one of our executive board members, will send them to me, and then I will give it to one of the panelists or whoever feels best equipped to answer that. So I'll take moderator's privilege. I'd like to first ask a question to Dr. James Spencer.
Positive influence religion has
One
on
of
the ability of the
someone's
family.
muted.
Yeah, but people are only interested if it comes out in a scientific study.
Sorry, I was going to ask a question first to Dr. Spencer James. Dr. James, one of the global family trends that you recognized in your presentation was something that intrigued me was you mentioned that instability was rising in high-income countries. Now, this really was interesting because it sort of flips some of the developmental discussions as a kind of precondition for family flourishing, family stability, robust institutions, robust policies and programs, sometimes often funded by the state. But in high-income countries, we're seeing more instability. So what are some of the sources of that, and how could that inform some of the policy discussions that may be happening in countries that are not necessarily high income, but will also want to not have the same level of rising instability?
Uh-huh. Well, you could write a dissertation on that question, so I'll try to be very brief. I would mention two things among many others that I could mention, and that is the idea of expressive individualism and self-actualization, right? So there's some really interesting work that's recently come out of Spain on household living arrangements across the world. And so they combined as many data sets as they could find and looked at household living arrangements. And they found that stable two-parent nuclear families were actually the most common in middle-income countries. That the extended family was most common in low-income countries, and that at the higher-income countries, while they had higher levels of nuclear family, in part because that's a sign of economic advantage, they actually found that decreasing levels of nuclear families over time, in part as we get more cohabitation, more singlehood, et cetera. I think this has a lot to do with much of the cultural messaging that then gets placed into practice around marriage and family. It's not about creating these relationships. It's not about creating these lifelong friendships and et cetera. It's about self-actualization. It's about becoming more of me. And so if I'm not getting out of my marriage or my relationship what I need to be, then I need to go find myself, right? I need to do it my way. I need to speak my truth. And while there's some clear benefit to that, and there's a lot of gender dynamics undergirding that are extremely important to pay attention to, that message, when it gets too extreme, when it becomes the sole focus of family relationships, leads to greater amounts of family instability. But it's a very difficult train to stop or to at least moderate. And I'm happy to talk more, but I don't want to take up the time for Dr. Aref and Dr. Okafor.
Thank you so much, Dr. James. This is a second question for Dr. Aref from one of our audience members. I think this was in response to one of your statistics cited that within the first 5 years is one of the most crucial times for family policies to be implemented, given the high divorce statistics during those years. So a question from the audience member is, what recommendations do you have that can strengthen stable family formation in youth, especially in order to increase marriage and decrease family breakdown? I believe they're assuming those early years that you're particularly mentioning that are particularly crucial for young couples. Dr. Aref.
Yes, so I guess in a short answer, enrollment in premarital education program would definitely help, and that's by evidence. The enrollment in such programs increase the potentiality of marriage stability and decrease the likelihood of early fragmentation or early divorce. you know, all of us, like we go to school, we go to the university, we have the education, qualifications, skills to start the career track, okay? But we don't do this kind of preparation before entering the marriage institution. So we take it as granted, and we are not, you know, investing time and effort to learn about the marriage and to have this kind of, you know, to be personally equipped with the skills, how to face the challenges, how to, you know, control stress, what could be done in the early years, and how you can overcome these kind of confrontation or challenges or whatsoever. I think that's one of the things that needs to be done. And in addition to that, of course, there should be kind of policies to support marriages. In many of the Arab countries, there is what is called marriage fund that can at least provide some kind of contribution to youth to you know, start their family life. There's housing provisions. There's also provisions related to increase of social allowance when you get the you know, the marriage certificate and so on and so forth. So there are kind of policies that you know, enable families also to be supported at the early establishment of this marriage institution. But I think more important is the element that, you know, people need to learn about marriage and marital relationship and parenting and quality parenting. And this all, I think, comes from the evidence-based premarital education programs.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aref. And Lynn clarified in her question that the question was for all speakers. So Dr. James and Dr. Okafor, if you would like also to chime in regarding the importance of the first 5 years, how can we increase marriage or address family breakdown in that? If you'd like to respond, otherwise we can go to the next questions.
Go ahead, Dr. Okafor, if you have any.
Yeah, how to respond to family breakdown? Well, I
Yes,
think,
within the first 5 years.
yeah, I think family, you see, marriage is a project. And unfortunately, not many people are prepared for marriage. People prepare for careers, you know. When you go to university, you're preparing for a future career. But no one thinks that there's a need to prepare for that long life commitment, which is the permanence and of marriage. And again, there are many forces that are against the family. So when the family becomes fragmented, obviously, you know that something is amiss with marriage. And I guess it's for government to understand that there's a need to support the family. There's a need to support that institution of called marriage, you know, so that families can thrive. And when families thrive, society will thrive. So I guess it's a question of actually thinking of, you know, institutions of higher learning preparing people for marriage. It doesn't have to be a core course. It could be like an elective program where people are prepared for the maturity, you know, that that is needed in marriage. Yeah, so that that institution can, you know, last and serve society in the best way possible. Yeah, that's just a quick response.
Thank you so much, Dr. Okafor. This is another question that Marcia sent me from an audience member. This is a question for Dr. James. You had a very provocative proposal in your presentation,
Not
which
sure if
was
that's a good thing or bad thing.
it was a movement. You mentioned a movement towards corporations, personhood, the radical idea of giving families personhood. Of course, I believe prior speakers mentioned the UDHR, the recognition of the family under international human rights law as the fundamental group unit of society. But the converse would be that, you know, human rights attaches to persons. So could you elaborate a little bit on what your proposal might look like in law and policy and in practice, and what the scholarship is on that proposal?
Yeah. Yeah. So first, I want to clarify that my idea of family personhood would in no way impact individual rights, right? I do not believe that we should be taking away individual human rights under really any circumstances. What I would propose would be that we have some examples of this already. So, for instance, there are countries around the world that name the family as the fundamental unit of society in their constitutions. If I understand correctly, Kenya does this, the Philippines does this, and I believe Ireland has it as well. One way of thinking about this is an idea that's been tossed around for a long time, one that we need to take more seriously, I believe, is that every policy in many countries and at many levels of government is required to go through an environmental review or an economic review. We could do the same thing for families. So every time that there is a proposal, somebody should be in charge of looking at it through a family lens. What is this going to do to the family? Is this likely to encourage the family behaviors that we want, or is this likely to discourage them? What is the potential effect knocking on? If I could really briefly address the previous question about what sorts of things can we do to strengthen relationship building in young adulthood, I've got lots of ideas. Whoever, I believe that was Lynn, I would love to send you a handful of notes. I've actually got a student that's working on that topic about what specific policies could we implement from, say, ages 10 to 12 and 13 to 15 and all the way on into young parenthood that where we can scaffold healthy relationships all the way through. Relationship education is an important one. I just want to briefly mention that a colleague and I have actually developed a course that should be implemented in the United Arab Emirates right now within the next year or so about how do we have we're calling it Foundations of Family Stability. And this is an internationally developed course. So if there's any interest in that, I'd love to talk with people about that. I just say that there are real policies we can point to. There are successes. There are options out there.
Thank you so much, Dr. James. This was our next question was directed to Dr. Aref, but I think it may be relevant to all of the speakers, given that you each mentioned both the global but also national trends of or regional trends of declining fertility rates. So I'll just throw this out and maybe have each of the speakers chime in. But the question was from the audience member says, there's a preference for quality over quantity in family size decisions. Can you share your thoughts on the challenge of encouraging potential parents or parents to have a quality in raising children while still increasing the number of children within the family? Does it have to be an either or question? And how do you influence culture to address this perception? So I know there's a lot of different moving parts, but again, any of the speakers can feel free to address that. I believe you each addressed fertility rates in different ways in your presentations.
Well, I'll quickly chip in. I
Yeah.
think that I think if we have to consider quality, against quantity, I would say quality time with the children is very important, or quality time spent as a family is very important, because the biggest problem we have is the absence of a father. Even some people who ended up as homosexuals will tell you that it was as a result of father hunger, that the father was not there, And okay, this is an extreme example, but then in a regular family, there is a need for quality time to be spent, amongst the mother, the father, and the children, as against presence, and what have you, which amounts to quantity, So yeah, I just thought I should just chip that in. And again, when it comes to education, quality education, especially in developing countries, must be favored, as opposed to free education, So even if education needs to be made free, it should not be free in the sense that it impoverishes the already poor population. But education should be quality And that requires looking into the skills of the teachers who teach, the pedagogy, and also seeing how we can tap into, assisted artificial technology in education, because we can also harness technology to serve, the teachers, to serve the students in schools. So quality certainly in terms of time spent with the family, and quality in terms of education, the nature of education that we give. And yes, and then again, quantity, because one should be open to fertility, but then at the same time, one should also be mindful of being able to care for the children that we bring into the world, and not be in a mad pursuit of bringing a lot of money home, bringing the bacon home, and then neglecting the most important duty towards which we should be spent in raising those children to be meaningful members of society. And so, in essence, the common good and the ethical and spiritual dimensions of the human person must be considered in every policy that we make, to make it of quality and to make it, add to the quality of life of the human person. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Okafor. Dr. Aref, would you like to add anything
Yes,
regarding
sure.
the fertility question?
Sure. I think one of the, when we asked the question about, particularly among the newly married couples, about their, thinking of having children, how many children and why, the frequency of answers emphasizing quality over quantity was remarkable. This comes, and we try to kind of decompose this kind of finding to understand by sub-questions what is going on, why quality over quantity. First of all, there is a fact of rising cost of raising children. The financial and time commitment associated with raising children have increased. In the meanwhile, there is kind of increased societal prosperity. So in high income countries like Qatar, the lifestyle choices, the fast-paced kind of lifestyle, the career aspiration, progression, interest in growing business beside your, family and normal career. All these kind of changing cultural, premises also contribute to the fact of, prioritizing quality over quantity. But we should look at it also from macro level perspective. It's not only the choices of the couples. There are like much more causes beyond the personal choices. For instance, the urbanization, and the decrease in the household size. And there is an evidence that affiliate the family size with the household size, and that's by common sense. So societies are becoming more urbanized, and that's against the concept of having large families, which might be the case maybe in some of the rural areas. There are also some kind of contextual factors related to delayed marriage, increased the divorce rates. So there are like many other causes that goes beyond the personal choices of quality over quantity. But yes, when you ask the couples, I think the first answer is quality over quantity. But there is also one pressing challenge and factor that has a direct impact on fertility decision, which is the lack of work-family balance provisions and entitlements in terms of flexible working arrangements, leave policies, childcare arrangements, and so on and so forth. And when you ask the participants in this study about their recommendation, what could be done if they have this kind of policies, they might rethink the number of children, or they might decide on having more children, the first thing was related to the expansion and the development of work-family balance policies. So
Thank you so
maybe financial kind of assistance coming as second and third, but work-family balance policies also as a solution gets the priority. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aref. And mindful of the time, I'd like to give each of the speakers now 30 seconds to a minute, maybe to give final remarks, anything you'd like to share, recommendations, reflections based on the discussion to the NGO committee and the family. Maybe we'll go in reverse from the first speaker. So maybe the Dr. Okafor can go first, then Dr. Aref, and then Dr. James, and then we can close up the event. Thank you so much again for your time.
Okay, thank you. I think in whatever we do, we need to think consequence. So whatever decisions we're taking, we need to look at the consequences of those decisions. We need to look at the ethical implications of those decisions and also the spiritual implications of those decisions. And those decisions must serve the family, the common good, because a family is the building blocks of society. So yes, I'd like to leave it at that, because in many cases, we tend to forget that the end and the means are important, especially when one is considering the trending, things such as surrogacy and euthanasia, which are anti-family policies. We need to understand that the end does not justify the means, and these things are injurious to the family and against injurious to the common good. And it's important to understand the dignity of the human person, and that laws must serve the dignity of the human persons, and laws must be ethical, and ethics must be legislated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Okafor. Dr. Aref?
Thank you. I would like to thank the NGO Committee on the Family, and I think my final remark would also relate to one of the questions I have seen from Eve Sullivan on the chat box, which is related to the second World Summit for Social Development. I think every NGO with a consultative status is also invited through the UN system and the digital platform to apply for a side event. I think this would be a very distinguished and remarkable and huge summit, which will gather more than 100 member states at the presidential level. The event will take place in Qatar from 4 to 6 November. And this is like 30 years after the Copenhagen summit, or the first social development summit. There were no other summits that took place, and this is the second summit. I think this will shape the social development agenda. We know that SDGs is the general umbrella, but SDGs contains many also elements related to environment, partnership, and so on and so forth. But the particular focus on social development will be during this summit. And we are trying, working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and with other partners, to try to have the family as a cornerstone for the social development agenda, and to be explicitly within the outcome of the second World Social Summit. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aref. We hope to see you all in Doha this fall.
Yes, you're most welcome.
Thank you. And then we'll end with Dr. James, please.
Well, I will be as brief as I possibly can. I would just remind us of a couple of quick things. I think that we just need to sing the song over and over again, that we have to think more cautiously, more carefully about the role of families, because families run through everything. There's no sustainable development goal that solid families aren't going to improve, and there's no sustainable development goal that family breakdown isn't going to make much worse. That's because families are the central decision-making units of our society. Economists worry about GDP, demographers can talk about fertility, policymakers can make all sorts of legislation about education, etc. But ultimately, it's families that decide where to live, how many children to have, and who attends school. And so we need to sing this song over and over again. Policy is ultimately a Plinko board. If you get that reference, at the bottom of that Plinko board is families. And ultimately, that's why we need to spend more time talking about them. I would also say, just very quickly, to the quality quantity trade-off, we see regular reports where people are shocked to learn that parents are among the happiest people on earth, that married people are happy, that people in healthy relationships are happy. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. I think we could sing the song better and more effectively about the fact that having children and raising them brings great personal fulfillment in many, many ways. And we need to try to maximize that fulfillment through many of these policies that we've talked about. Work, family balance, all of these things matter. But ultimately, we need to sing those songs more effectively. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Dr. James. Thank you all to the presenters who gave your time to us, and we appreciate those who stuck with us going over time. The NGO Committee and the family is very grateful to each of the speakers and to those who attended our event for this excellent and substantive discussion. I believe one of the committee members will post on the link to the NGO Committee website, so you can follow up with our upcoming programming over the next couple of months. And with that, just thank you all and hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. Thank you.